My wife and I got married in 2017 at the Church of the Little Flower in Coral Gables, Florida. We invited all of our close friends and family, including some relatives that neither of us were particularly fond of, simply because that's what you're expected to do at a wedding. My wife, Allie, has an estranged aunt named Chelsea. No one in her family is very close to her. Years ago, she struggled with serious drug problems, and it led to a major rift between her and the rest of the family. Even so, Aunt Chelsea was invited to the wedding. When she arrived, she surprisingly brought a date with her. Unsurprisingly, though, he didn't look like the kind of guy you'd want to introduce to your parents. From the moment I first saw him, something about him felt off. Not in a quirky or interesting way, just unsettling. After the ceremony, it was time for pictures. The 6 bridesmaids, 6 groomsmen, my wife, and I all went to a nice backyard area of the church campus where the photographer had us pose for photos. Some close family members from both sides came along to watch, while most of the other guests went ahead to the reception hall. Chelsea and her date stayed to watch the photos being taken. That was when I first learned his name, Rob. Almost immediately, the two of them began making everyone uncomfortable. Whenever someone in the bridal party would joke around, and we'd all laugh, or Rob would shout out something strange or inappropriate, it kept happening over and over again until the atmosphere became painfully awkward. Conversations would stop, and everyone would just cringe internally, waiting to see what weird comment they'd make next. Honestly, I started wishing they would just leave. Eventually, we finished the photos and moved over to Comber Hall. The reception hall connected to the church, where food and drinks were being served. Being the groom meant that everyone wanted to talk to me. I barely had a moment to sit down or even grab something to eat. People kept coming up, one after another, to congratulate me. Eventually, one of those people was Rob. He shook my hand again. His breath smelled terrible, and I noticed his arms were covered in scars. He wasn't wearing long sleeves, just a dirty gray polo shirt that looked stained. Everything about him gave off the impression that he was unhygienic and rough around the edges. He spoke loudly and almost in a condescending tone. I did my best to remain polite until he eventually walked back toward Chelsea. That was the last time I saw him that day. Later on, I noticed Chelsea sitting alone at a table. I asked her where Rob had gone, but she had no idea either. After she had been sitting alone for a while, Allie walked over and asked the same thing. Chelsea explained she hadn't seen him in about an hour. She also told us something that made us uneasy. She had actually met Rob in rehab and had only gone out with him 4 times. Hearing that made Allie concerned about the fact that this guy had been wandering around our wedding. We asked our parents and a few relatives to look around the reception hall to see if Rob was still there. Then, someone came back with troubling news. Some of the wedding gifts in the room where they were being stored were missing. Immediately, we suspected Rob. One of the staff members made an announcement over the microphone asking everyone to keep an eye out for him. Chelsea tried calling his phone, but then realized she couldn't find her own phone either. The situation definitely put a damper on the celebration, but we didn't let it completely ruin our wedding day. Our parents contacted the police and handled things quietly while Chelsea gave them whatever information she had about Rob. After the reception, a few close friends came back with us to our hotel room to continue celebrating. Later that night, Allie received a text from Chelsea asking for our home address because she had forgotten to give us our wedding gift and wanted to drop it off. Sent it to her. Not long after that, our good time was interrupted by a strange phone call from Chelsea's number. Allie turned down the music and put the call on speaker. At first, all we could hear was heavy breathing on the other end. Paniquantly. It sounded like something straight out of a horror movie, like whoever was on the line was deliberately trying to creep us out. Allie kept asking where Chelsea was, but there was no response. Eventually the caller hung up. Allie immediately called her grandmother, who was the only person close enough with Chelsea to know where she would be staying that night. Grandmother confirmed Chelsea was staying with her. Chelsea then got on the phone and explained she had lost her phone at the wedding and didn't know her Apple ID or password, so she couldn't even track it using Find My iPhone. Our best guess was that Rob had taken her phone, which meant he now had our home address. Since we weren't home and were still at the hotel, we got worried about the possibility of him going to our house. We were too drunk to drive back, so we asked my dad if he could stay there for the night and keep an eye on things. He agreed. The next morning, we woke up to several missed calls and texts from him. He told us someone had been outside the house during the night, moving from window to window like they were trying to mess with him or scare him. He had called the police, but by the time they arrived, nobody was there. Later that day, we went to the police station to see what could be done about finding Rob. Unfortunately, since there were no cameras catching the theft in the reception hall and Chelsea's phone had either been destroyed or turned off, there wasn't much the police could do. Chelsea also told us that she and Rob had gotten into an argument earlier in the night. According to her, Rob blamed us for the tension he felt at the wedding. He believed we didn't like him, and in his words, that we had sabotaged him. That only made us more convinced that he was the one behind the creepy phone call and the strange activity outside our house. Thankfully, we never saw or heard from Rob again. But after everything that happened, we slowly began distancing ourselves from Chelsea as well. Story 2. I had a pretty simple beach wedding, mostly just family and close friends. My wife, I'll call her Trisha, invited more people than I did. One of those people was her ex-boyfriend Kyle. I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about that, but I tried to act like it didn't bother me, because she insisted they were still good friends. There were around 75 guests at the ceremony, including Kyle. On the day of the wedding, I didn't pay it much attention. It was such a big day, and my mind was racing with everything happening. Kyle was friendly toward me, but throughout the reception I kept noticing something. He was constantly talking to Trisha, and whenever he wasn't talking to her, he seemed to be watching her from across the room. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid. After all, Trisha and I were married now. It wasn't like he had any chance. Still, it was slightly annoying. I also found it a little strange that he came to the wedding alone without bringing a date. That night, Trisha and I stayed at a nice waterfront hotel. The following day, we went back home. A few people who couldn't attend the wedding stopped by the house to congratulate us and drop off gifts. Surprisingly, showed up too. Trisha and I had recently moved into a new house together, and Kyle said he wanted to see the new place and also drop off his gift. He handed Trisha an envelope and a small teddy bear about a foot tall. The bear was holding a heart with our initials on it. I actually thought it was a thoughtful gift. We gave Kyle a quick tour of the house and had a beer with him before he left. Inside the envelope was a card with 100. Even though the gifts were nice, I still felt like Kyle had unresolved feelings for Trisha. I asked her if she could ease back a little on their friendship. She insisted there was nothing romantic left between them. She said they were just close friends and that she wasn't attracted to him anymore. Still, she agreed to reduce contact with him. She placed the teddy bear on the dresser with some of our other gifts. Later that night, we were in bed together when I heard a strange noise. It sounded like a small electronic vibration. I assumed it was my phone getting a notification. About half an hour later, while we were lying in the dark talking, I heard the sound again. This time I looked toward the dresser. My eyes landed on the teddy bear. I got up slowly and picked it up. Then my heart dropped. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and started cutting the bear open. Trisha realized what was happening immediately. Inside the bear's head was a small electronic device, a camera hidden behind the left eye, and a microphone wired to the left ear. Everything was connected to what looked like a Bluetooth transmitter. Kyle had planted a hidden camera in the bear. We went straight to the police station that night and filed a report. After that, we hired a lawyer and pressed charges for invasion of privacy. The judge ruled in our favor, was ordered to pay each of us $155. Trisha also received a restraining order against him. Was the end of Kyle in our lives, but sometimes we still think about how far someone like that might be willing to go. If he was crazy enough to hide a camera inside a teddy bear just to spy on us, possibly even watch us in bed, who knows what else he might have been capable of. Story 3. I live in a very safe town, the kind of place where people often leave their car doors unlocked. Sometimes people even leave their house doors unlocked. Crime is extremely rare. My house sits on a dead-end street. One night I got home from work around 8 p.m. after finishing a 12-hour shift. I started preparing a late dinner when the phone rang. The moment I picked it up, the person on the other end hung up. I don't know if that had anything to do with what happened later that night, but thinking about it still gives me chills. After long shifts like that, my routine is simple. Cook dinner, eat, clean up, take a shower, and then lie in bed watching TV for a while before going to sleep. That night I was completely exhausted. I turned on the TV and started watching The Sopranos, a show I've rewatched several times. At some point I drifted off to sleep with the TV still playing. When I woke up, the show was still on. I had apparently slept through 2 episodes. I reached for the remote and turned the TV off. With the room suddenly quiet, I started hearing faint creaks in the floor. My adrenaline kicked in. Across the dark room, I thought I could see the vague shape of someone standing there. I quickly pointed the remote back toward the TV to turn it on again. Before the screen even lit up, I choked out the words, "Please leave." When the TV turned back on, its blue glow filled the room. Standing there was a woman in a white wedding dress. Her face was covered by a veil. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I was frozen with shock. The woman slowly walked toward the bed and began whispering the same words over and over. Where is my groom? Each time she repeated it, her voice grew louder. Eventually she started yelling. She grabbed the edge of my mattress and began shaking it violently. I finally screamed at her to leave me alone. Then I jumped off the bed, pushed past her, and ran to the bathroom across the hall, locking the door behind me. She followed me and started banging on the door, still shouting the same words. Where's my groom? I yelled that I was calling the police. Luckily, I had my phone with me. While I was on the phone with 911, the woman suddenly started crying on the other side of the door. Then I heard her shout one last thing. I have to get to my wedding. A moment later, I heard heavy footsteps running down the stairs. Then the front door slammed. When the police arrived, I described what had happened. A large woman wearing a wedding dress and veil, who kept asking where her groom was. I had no idea which direction she ran. It could have been down the street or into the woods beside my house. Because I had been so exhausted after my shift, had forgotten to lock my front door that night. It was something I never thought twice about in my neighborhood. But that night proved something important. Even in the safest neighborhoods, you're never completely safe from the truly unstable people out there. I still hope that someone eventually found that woman wandering the streets that night and got her the help she clearly needed.